The knock came at midnight. 3 desperate pounds on a penthouse door that would shatter 2 lives forever. Vivian Sterling stood frozen in her marble foyer, wine glass trembling in her hand. Nobody knocked on her door. Not at this hour. Not ever. The rain hammered against floor-to-ceiling windows behind her, angry and relentless, drowning the city 40 stories below in sheets of black water. Her penthouse was a fortress of glass and steel, cold and pristine, just like the woman who lived there alone. She'd built an empire from nothing. Sterling Medical Technologies. Billions in her name. Awards lining her walls. And yet, every night felt the same, silent, hollow, suffocating. The knock came again. Louder this time. More urgent. Vivian's heart lurched. Her fingers tightened around the glass. Something about those knocks felt wrong. Felt desperate. Felt like the kind of sound that comes before everything changes. She crossed the foyer, heels clicking against marble, and pressed her palm against the door. Who's there? Silence. Then a small voice cracking with tears. Please, please open. Vivian's breath caught. A child. She yanked the door open and the world tilted. A little girl collapsed at her feet, drenched and sobbing, her yellow dress torn and muddy, her brown hair plastered to her face. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old. Her small hands clawed at Vivian's legs, fingers desperate and shaking. Please. The girl gasped, choking on her tears. They beaten my mama. She's dying. Please help her. Vivian's knees buckled. She dropped to the floor, the wine glass shattering somewhere behind her, forgotten. The girl's eyes, wide, terrified, pleading, locked onto hers, and something deep inside Vivian cracked open. She'd spent years building walls around her heart. Years perfecting the art of distance. Years telling herself she didn't need anyone. But this child, this tiny, broken child, was looking at her like she was the only hope left in the world. Where is she? Vivian whispered, her voice steady even as her hands shook. The girl grabbed her wrist, pulling with surprising strength. Hurry, please, she's bleeding so much. Vivian didn't think. Didn't hesitate. She grabbed her coat from the hook, shoved her phone into her pocket, and let the girl pull her into the rain. Behind them, the penthouse door swung shut, locking out the life Vivian had carefully constructed. She didn't know it yet, but she would never be the same woman who'd opened that door. Some moments change everything. And this was hers. The rain was merciless, cold bullets stinging Vivian's skin as the girl dragged her through the night. Her designer heels slipped on wet pavement, but she didn't slow down. The child's grip on her wrist was iron-tight, fueled by terror and adrenaline. What's your name? Vivian shouted over the storm. Isla, the girl gasped, not looking back. My mama's name is Celeste. She's not moving anymore. Vivian's stomach twisted. She'd seen death before. The night her parents died, she'd watched them slip away, helpless and screaming. That memory never left her. It lived in her bones, in the hollow space behind her ribs. They turned down an alley, and Isla led her to a crumbling apartment building that looked like it had been forgotten by the city decades ago. Graffiti scarred the walls. Broken windows gaped like empty eye sockets. The front door hung off its hinges. Inside, the stairwell reeked of mold and urine. Vivian's breath came in sharp gasps as they climbed 3 flights, Isla's small feet pounding the stairs with desperate speed. In here, Isla whispered, her voice breaking. She pushed open a door to a one-room apartment barely bigger than Vivian's closet. A single bulb flickered overhead, casting sickly yellow light across peeling wallpaper and a sagging mattress in the corner. And there, crumpled on the floor like a discarded doll, was a woman. Vivian's heart stopped. Celeste Quinn lay motionless, her face swollen and purple with bruises. Blood pooled beneath her head, dark and spreading. Her arms were twisted at unnatural angles, and her chest barely moved with shallow, rattling breaths. Oh God, Vivian breathed. She dropped to her knees beside the woman, her hands hovering, unsure where to touch without causing more pain. Celeste's eyes were closed, her lips cracked and bleeding. She looked young, too young to have a 7-year-old daughter. Maybe late 20s. Maybe. Vivian yanked her phone from her pocket, fingers slipping on the wet screen. 911, I need an ambulance. Now. The operator's voice crackled through. What's your emergency? A woman's been beaten. Badly. Multiple injuries. She's unconscious and losing blood. Where at? She looked at Isla. What's the address? Isla whispered it, her voice so small Vivian almost didn't hear. She relayed the information, then pressed her coat against the wound on Celeste's head, applying pressure the way she'd seen in movies in nightmares. The fabric soaked through immediately, warm and sticky. "Stay with me," Vivian whispered to Celeste. "Please. Your daughter needs you." Isla knelt beside her, trembling. She reached out and touched her mother's hand so gently it broke Vivian's heart. "Mama," Isla whispered. "I brought help. Like you said. I found the lady with the tall building. You said she might help us." Vivian's breath hitched. The tall building? Had Celeste sent Isla to her specifically? "Oh. Who did this?" Vivian asked, her voice tight. Isla's whole body went rigid. Her eyes darted to the door, terror flooding her face. "Isla," Vivian said gently. "Who hurt your mama?" The girl's lips trembled. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "My daddy," she whispered, the words barely audible. "My daddy did this. He said if we told anyone he'd make us disappear. He said nobody would believe us anyway because he's important." Vivian's blood turned to ice. She looked down at Celeste's broken body, at the bruises layered on top of older bruises, at the way her bones jutted wrong beneath her skin. This wasn't the first time. This had been happening for a long time. "Where is he now?" Vivian asked. "I don't know. He left after he—" Isla couldn't finish. She buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Vivian pulled the girl close, wrapping an arm around her tiny frame. Isla stiffened at first, then collapsed against her, soaking Vivian's shoulder with tears. "You're safe now," Vivian whispered. "I promise. He won't hurt you. I won't let him." She didn't know why she was making promises to a child she just met. Didn't know what possessed her to speak with such certainty. But something about Isla's eyes, the way they looked at her with desperate hope, made it impossible to stay silent. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Celeste's eyelids fluttered. Her lips moved, trying to form words. "Don't talk," Vivian said quickly, leaning closer. "Help is coming. You're going to be okay." But Celeste's hand shot out, weak fingers wrapping around Vivian's wrist with surprising desperation. Her eyes opened just a crack, unfocused and glassy with pain. "Don't let him take her," Celeste rasped, blood bubbling at the corner of her mouth. "Promise me." Vivian's throat tightened. "I promise. I won't let anyone take her. He'll come." Celeste's grip tightened, nails digging into Vivian's skin. "He always comes." Then her hand went limp and her eyes rolled back. "Celeste." Vivian pressed her fingers to the woman's neck, searching for a pulse. It was there, faint, thready, but there. Paramedics burst through the door moments later, a flurry of uniforms and equipment. They moved with practiced efficiency, checking vitals, stabilizing Celeste's neck, loading her onto a stretcher. "Are you family?" one of them asked Vivian. "No, I'm her daughter." Isla cried, grabbing Vivian's hand. "Please don't leave my mama alone." The paramedic looked at Vivian. "You riding with us?" Vivian didn't hesitate. "Yes." They loaded Celeste into the ambulance, and Vivian climbed in beside Isla, holding the girl's hand as the doors slammed shut and the siren screamed to life. The city blurred past in streaks of light and shadow. Inside the ambulance, everything was too bright, too loud, too real. Celeste's body jerked as they worked on her, inserting IVs, checking monitors, shouting medical jargon Vivian barely understood. Isla squeezed her hand so hard it hurt. "Is she going to die?" the girl whispered. Vivian looked at Celeste's pale face, at the machines keeping her alive, at the blood still seeping through bandages. "No," she lied. "She's going to be okay." But even as she said it, she wasn't sure she believed it. The ambulance screeched to a halt outside Sterling Memorial Hospital. Vivian's hospital, the one she'd built in her parents' memory. Irony twisted like a knife in her gut. They wheeled Celeste through the emergency entrance, and Vivian followed, Isla still clinging to her hand like a lifeline. A familiar voice called out. "Vivian?" She turned. Dr. Kieran Reeves stood in the hallway, his surgical scrubs splattered with someone else's blood, exhaustion lining his face. He was her oldest friend, the chief surgeon she'd personally recruited 5 years ago. "Kieran," she breathed. "I need you." He took one look at Celeste's broken body disappearing through the trauma bay doors, then at the terrified child gripping Vivian's hand, and his expression hardened. "Come with me," he said. The waiting room was too bright, too sterile, too quiet. Vivian sat beside Isla on a plastic chair, the girl's small body pressed against her side. Isla hadn't let go of her hand since they arrived. Her eyes were wide and glassy, staring at nothing, seeing everything. Shock, Vivian realized. The child was in shock. She wanted to say something comforting, something that would make the fear disappear from Isla's face. But what could she say? Your mother might die? Your father is a monster? You're 7 years old and your world just shattered? So she said nothing. Just held the girl's hand and waited. Kieran emerged from the trauma bay an hour later, pulling off his surgical mask. His face was grim. Vivian stood, her heart hammering. How is she? He glanced at Isla, then back at Vivian. Can we talk privately? No, Isla whispered, her voice raw. I need to know. Is my mama going to die? Kieran crouched down to Isla's level, his expression softening. Your mama is very hurt. We're doing everything we can to help her. She's in surgery right now and my best surgeons are taking care of her. But is she going to die? Isla's voice cracked. Kieran hesitated. Vivian saw the truth in his eyes before he spoke. I don't know, he admitted. But we're fighting for her. And she's fighting too. Isla nodded slowly, tears sliding down her cheeks. She didn't make a sound. Vivian's chest ached. This child had learned not to cry loudly. Learned to be silent, invisible, safe. Kieran stood and motioned for Vivian to step aside. She squeezed Isla's hand. I'll be right back. I promise. Isla nodded, hugging herself. Vivian followed Kieran into the hallway, out of earshot. Tell me, she said. Kieran's jaw tightened. Multiple skull fractures. Internal bleeding in her abdomen and chest. 3 broken ribs. Her left arm is shattered. She has bruises in various stages of healing, which means this has been ongoing for a long time. He paused, his voice dropping. Vivian, this wasn't just an assault. This was attempted murder. Vivian's hands clenched into fists. Who did this to her? The girl said her father. Do you have a name? Not yet. But I've already notified the police. They'll want to talk to both of you. Vivian nodded, her mind racing. I need you to do something for me. Anything. Keep Celeste alive. Whatever it takes. Kieran's expression softened. You know I will. But Vivian, why are you involved in this? You don't know these people. She looked back at Isla, sitting alone in that too bright waiting room, small and broken and brave. I don't know, she whispered. But I can't walk away. Kieran studied her for a long moment, then nodded. I'll keep you updated. He disappeared back into the trauma bay and Vivian returned to Isla. The girl looked up at her with those impossibly old eyes. He's going to come for me, isn't he? Vivian sat down beside her. Who? My daddy. He always finds us. Mama tried to hide, but he always finds us. What's your father's name, Isla? The girl's whole body tensed. Her lips pressed together and she shook her head violently. Isla, Vivian said gently. I can't protect you if I don't know who I'm protecting you from. You can't protect me, Isla whispered. Nobody can. He's too powerful. He said so. He said he could make us disappear and nobody would ever know. Vivian's blood ran cold. He's not going to hurt you again. I promise. You keep making promises you can't keep, Isla said, and there was something heartbreaking about the resignation in her voice. Vivian pulled out her phone and dialed a number she rarely used. Ruby. I need you. It's 1 a.m, Vivian. What's wrong? Everything. I need you to come to Sterling Memorial. Now. And bring your laptop. Are you okay? Just come. Please. She hung up and looked at Isla. I have someone who's very good at finding information. She's going to help us. Isla didn't respond. She just stared at the trauma bay doors, waiting for news about her mother. 20 minutes later, Ruby Chin burst through the emergency entrance, laptop bag slung over her shoulder, her purple hair disheveled. She was Vivian's executive assistant, but more than that, she was the closest thing Vivian had to a friend besides Kieran. Ruby took one look at Isla and her expression shifted from confusion to fierce protectiveness. Who's this? She asked, sitting down on Isla's other side. This is Isla, Vivian said. Isla, this is Ruby. She's going to help us. Ruby smiled at the girl. Hi Isla. I like your dress. Yellow's my favorite color. Isla looked down at her torn, muddy dress and said nothing. Ruby glanced at Vivian, eyebrows raised. Vivian filled her in quickly. The knock on her door, Celeste's condition, Isla's terror of her father. I need you to find out who he is, Vivian said. The girl's terrified to say his name, but I need to know what we're dealing with. Ruby nodded and opened her laptop. What's your last name, sweetheart? Quinn, Isla whispered. Ruby's fingers flew across the keyboard. And your mama's name is Celeste Quinn? Isla nodded. Okay. Let me see what I can find. Vivian watched Ruby work, her mind spinning. Why had Celeste sent Isla to her specifically? How did she even know where Vivian lived? Minutes ticked by. Ruby's frown deepened. This is weird, she muttered. What? Celeste Quinn. 29 years old. Former registered nurse, but she hasn't worked in that field for almost 8 years. No current employment records. No property ownership. It's like she's been living off the grid. What about the father? Ruby hesitated, her eyes scanning the screen. Then her face went pale. Oh no. What? Vivian demanded. Ruby turned the laptop around. On the screen was a professional headshot of a man in his mid-40s, handsome in that polished, powerful way. Salt and pepper hair. Expensive suit. Confident smile. The caption beneath read, Donovan Creed, real estate mogul and philanthropist, announces city council campaign. Donovan Creed, Ruby whispered. Billionaire. He owns half the commercial real estate in the city. Major political donor. He's been in the news constantly for the past 6 months because of his campaign. His platform is all about family values and community safety. Vivian stared at the screen, bile rising in her throat. He looks nice, Isla said softly, her voice hollow. Everyone thinks he's nice. That's why nobody believes us. Ruby kept scrolling. His public record is spotless. Charities, donations, awards. There's not a single negative article about him. She paused. Which is suspicious in itself. Nobody's this clean. Can you dig deeper? Vivian asked. I can try, but if he's as powerful as he seems, anything incriminating will be buried deep. Vivian's phone buzzed. A text from Kieran, she's out of surgery. Critical but stable. You should come. Celeste's out of surgery, Vivian told Isla. Do you want to see her? Isla nodded, standing immediately. They followed a nurse through sterile hallways to the ICU. Celeste lay in a bed surrounded by machines, tubes snaking from her arms, a ventilator breathing for her. Her face was barely recognizable beneath the swelling and bruises. Isla walked to the bedside and took her mother's hand with infinite gentleness. I did what you said, Mama, she whispered. I found her. The lady from the tall building. She's helping us. Celeste didn't respond. Couldn't respond. But then, slowly, her fingers twitched. Her eyelids fluttered. Vivian stepped closer. Celeste? Can you hear me? Celeste's eyes opened just a crack. Unfocused. Glassy with pain and medication. But they found Vivian's face. Recognition flickered there, something deeper than just this moment. Celeste's lips moved. The ventilator made it impossible to hear, but Vivian could read the words. Thank you. Then her eyes shifted to Isla. Keep her safe. Her hand tightened around Vivian's wrist with surprising strength. Promise me. Don't let him take my baby. Vivian's throat closed. She nodded, tears stinging her eyes. I promise. You won't touch her. I swear it. Celeste's grip loosened. Her eyes closed. The machines beeped steadily and she slipped back into unconsciousness. Why did she come to you? Ruby asked quietly. How did she even know where you live? Vivian stared at Celeste's broken face, at the bruises layered upon bruises, at the fragile rise and fall of her chest. I don't know, she whispered. But I'm going to find out. Behind them, the ICU doors swung open, and Donovan Creed walked in. He moved like a man who owned every room he entered. Donovan Creed swept through the ICU with the easy confidence of wealth and power, his tailored suit perfect despite the late hour, his face arranged in an expression of devastated concern. 2 security guards trailed behind him. A woman in an expensive blazer walked at his side. His lawyer, Vivian, guessed. Celeste, Donovan breathed, his voice breaking. Oh God, my wife. He moved toward the bed, but Isla scrambled backward with a gasp of pure terror, pressing herself against Vivian. Vivian's instincts took over. She stepped between Donovan and the bed, her body shielding Isla. That's close enough, she said, her voice ice. Donovan stopped, his grief-stricken expression faltering for just a fraction of a second. His eyes, cold, calculating, swept over Vivian, taking her measure. Then the mask of concern slid back into place, smooth as oil. I'm sorry, who are you? He asked, his tone polite but edged with authority. Vivian Sterling. Recognition flickered across his face. The Billionaire CEO? What are you doing with my family? Your daughter came to my door tonight. She told me you beat her mother nearly to death. The words hung in the air like a blade. Donovan's expression didn't change, but Vivian saw the flash of fury in his eyes before he controlled it. My daughter? He let out a hollow laugh, shaking his head. Miss Sterling, I don't know what story Isla told you, but she's confused. Traumatized. My wife and I have been searching for her all night. We had an intruder break into our home. Celeste tried to fight him off, and in the chaos Isla ran. I've been looking everywhere. That's a lie, Vivian said flatly. The lawyer stepped forward, her expression sharp. Miss Sterling, you need to be very careful about making accusations without evidence. The evidence is lying in that bed, Vivian shot back. Multiple fractures. Internal bleeding. Bruises in various stages of healing. This wasn't an intruder. This was prolonged, systematic abuse. Donovan's jaw tightened. You're mistaken. Am I? Vivian felt Isla trembling against her back, heard the girl's ragged breathing. The child was terrified, not of what had happened but of the man standing in front of them. That told Vivian everything she needed to know. Donovan took a step closer, his voice dropping. Miss Sterling, I understand you're trying to help. But you're interfering in a family matter you don't understand. Isla is my daughter. Celeste is my wife. And I have every legal right to take my child home right now. No, Isla whimpered behind Vivian. No, please. See, Vivian said coldly. She's terrified of you. She's traumatized, Donovan countered smoothly. She doesn't know what she's saying. She needs her father. Ruby moved to stand beside Vivian, phone in hand. Funny thing about trauma. It doesn't usually make children afraid of the people who protect them. Only the ones who hurt them. Donovan's eyes flicked to Ruby, dismissive. Then back to Vivian. I'm taking my daughter home, he said, his voice hardening. Now. He moved toward Isla and the girl let out a strangled cry. Vivian didn't think. She grabbed Isla and pulled her close, her arms wrapping protectively around the child. Touch her and I'll have security remove you, Vivian said. Donovan stopped, his mask finally cracking. His expression went cold, vicious, and for a moment Vivian saw exactly what Celeste and Isla had seen, the monster beneath the polished exterior. You have no authority here, he said quietly. No legal standing. No claim to my child. I'm the CEO of this hospital. And until the police investigate what happened to Celeste, Isla stays under my protection. Your protection? Donovan laughed, but there was no humor in it. You've known her for what, a few hours? And you think you have any right to keep a father from his daughter? I have the right to keep a child safe from her abuser. You have no proof I'm an abuser, Donovan said, his voice dangerously soft. What you have is the word of a traumatized 7-year-old against the word of a respected businessman and community leader. Who do you think people will believe? Vivian felt Isla flinch against her, and something inside her hardened into steel. I believe her, Vivian said. And that's enough. The lawyer stepped forward again. Mr. Creed has every legal right to take custody of his minor child. If you continue to interfere, we'll have you charged with kidnapping. Ruby scoffed. Good luck with that. We're in a hospital. The child came to Vivian for help. That's not kidnapping. Kieran emerged from the hallway, his expression thunderous. What's going on here? Dr. Reeves, Vivian said, relief flooding through her. This man claims to be Celeste Quinn's husband. I believe he's also the one who put her in the ICU. Kieran's eyes narrowed. He looked at Donovan, then at Isla cowering behind Vivian, then back at Donovan. I've already called the police, Kieran said. They'll want to speak with everyone involved. Including you, Mr. Creed. Donovan's expression smoothed back into careful neutrality. Of course. I want whoever hurt my wife brought to justice. I'm sure you do, Kieran said dryly. Hospital security arrived then, 3 guards Vivian recognized, led by Marcus, the head of security. Miss Sterling? Marcus said. You called? Yes. Mr. Creed is attempting to remove a minor from the hospital against her will. I need you to escort him out until the police arrive and sort out custody. Donovan's face went rigid. You can't do this. I just did, Vivian said. Marcus and his team moved to flank Donovan. Sir, you need to come with us. The lawyer bristled. This is illegal detention. We'll be filing a lawsuit. File whatever you want, Vivian said coldly. But he's not taking this child tonight. Donovan stared at Vivian for a long moment, his eyes promising retribution. Then he smiled, a cold, calculated smile that made Vivian's skin crawl. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Miss Sterling, he said softly. I've destroyed people more powerful than you. This isn't over. No, Vivian agreed. It's not. Security escorted him out, his lawyer protesting loudly. The ICU fell silent except for the steady beep of Celeste's monitors. Vivian's hands were shaking. She looked down at Isla, who was still pressed against her, trembling. Is he gone? Isla whispered. He's gone. He'll come back. He always comes back. Vivian knelt down to Isla's level, taking the girl's small hands in hers. Listen to me. I know you're scared. I know you think nobody can protect you from him. But I promise you, I will not let him hurt you. Do you understand? Isla's eyes filled with tears. You don't know what he's like. He's not like other people. He can make anyone believe anything. He'll make them think you're crazy. He'll make them think my mama is lying. Then we'll prove he's not what he seems, Vivian said firmly. Ruby crouched beside them. And you're not alone, Isla. You've got us now. Kieran nodded. She's right. We're with you. Isla looked at each of them, these three strangers who'd appeared in her life like guardian angels, and something in her expression shifted. Not hope exactly, but maybe the faintest glimmer of it. Okay, she whispered. Vivian pulled the girl into a hug, and Isla clung to her like she was drowning and Vivian was the only solid thing left in the world. Over Isla's shoulder, Vivian met Kieran's eyes. He looked worried. You know what you just started, right? Yes. He's not going to back down. Men like that never do. Neither will I. Ruby closed her laptop with a snap. Then we'd better get ready for war. Vivian couldn't sleep. She stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her penthouse, staring out at the city lights bleeding through the darkness. Dawn was still hours away, but she knew she wouldn't rest. Isla was asleep on her couch, wrapped in a blanket Ruby had brought from the hospital gift shop. The girl had finally crashed around 3 in the morning, exhaustion overcoming fear. But Vivian couldn't stop replaying the night. The desperate knock. Celeste's broken body. Isla's terrified eyes. Donovan's cold smile. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Maybe she didn't. Maybe this was reckless. She'd built her entire life on calculated decisions, careful moves, strategic planning. There was nothing calculated about this. A 7-year-old girl had knocked on her door, and Vivian had opened it. That single choice had pulled her into someone else's nightmare, and she couldn't walk away. She didn't want to walk away. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ruby, you okay? Vivian typed back, can't sleep. Thinking. About? Everything. Pause. Then, you're going to fight for her, aren't you? Vivian looked at Isla, curled up so small on the couch, her face finally peaceful in sleep. Yes. Good. I'll start digging into Creed's background. If there's dirt, I'll find it. Thank you. That's what friends are for. Try to get some rest. Vivian set her phone down and closed her eyes, letting the memory wash over her. She was 19 again. Sitting in a sterile emergency room that smelled like antiseptic and death. Holding her mother's hand while machines beeped their final warnings. We're doing everything we can, the doctor had said. But they weren't. They'd been understaffed, overwhelmed, stretched too thin. Her parents had waited too long for treatment, and by the time someone noticed them, it was too late. Vivian had watched them die. Watched the light leave their eyes. And she'd made a vow that night, through tears and rage and grief. Never again. Never let anyone suffer alone. Never let bureaucracy and indifference kill people who could have been saved. That vow had driven her to build sterling medical technologies. To revolutionize hospital management systems. To make sure no one else lost their parents because a hospital didn't have time. And now, a little girl had shown up at her door, begging for help. How could she do anything but say yes? Vivian walked to her desk and dialed her lawyer's personal line. It rang 3 times before a groggy voice answered. Vivian? It's 4 in the morning. I need you to file emergency custody paperwork. I'm taking guardianship of a minor. Silence. Then, what? Her name is Isla Quinn. 7 years old. Her mother is in critical condition, and her father is an abusive monster. I need legal protection for her. Immediately. Vivian, you can't just. Yes, I can. And I am. Draw up the papers. I'll sign them as soon as they're ready. Another pause. This is going to be a fight. If the father contests it, he will. Then you need to be prepared. This won't be easy. Vivian looked at Isla again, at the bruises peeking out from beneath the blanket, at the way even in sleep she seemed braced for danger. I don't care, Vivian said. Prepare for a fight. She hung up. Behind her, Isla stirred. Her eyes opened, wide and frightened, scanning the unfamiliar room before landing on Vivian. You're still here? The girl whispered. Vivian crossed to the couch and sat beside her. I'm not going anywhere. Isla sat up slowly, the blanket falling from her shoulders. Her hair was tangled, her eyes red-rimmed. My daddy's going to be so angry. Let him be angry. You don't understand. When he gets angry, people get hurt. Isla's voice dropped to barely a whisper. He hurt Mama so many times. She tried to leave once when I was little. He found us. He said if she ever tried again, he'd make sure I never saw her again. So she stopped trying. Vivian's chest tightened. How long has he been hurting her? Isla looked down at her hands, small fingers twisting together. Always. For as long as I can remember. He's nice sometimes. Buys me presents. Takes us to fancy restaurants. But then something makes him angry and... She trailed off, the words too heavy to carry. And he hits her. Isla nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. Mama always told me it wasn't my fault. That grown-up problems weren't for little girls to fix. But I knew. I always knew it was because of me. No, Vivian said firmly, taking Isla's hands. Listen to me. This is not your fault. Do you hear me? What your father did to your mother, that's his choice. His violence. His evil. You are not responsible for the actions of adults. But if I wasn't born, then your mother would have lost the one beautiful thing in her life, Vivian interrupted. Isla, your mother loves you. She fought to protect you. She sent you to me because she knew you were worth saving. Don't ever think you're the reason for someone else's cruelty. Isla stared at her, fresh tears spilling over. Then she threw her arms around Vivian's neck and sobbed. Vivian held her, this tiny, brave, broken child, and felt something shift inside her chest. Something that had been frozen for years began to thaw. She'd spent a decade building walls, keeping people at arm's length, telling herself she didn't need family, didn't need connection, didn't need anything but her work. But holding Isla, feeling the girl's desperate grip, hearing her broken sobs, Vivian realized how wrong she'd been. She needed this. Maybe even more than Isla did. I'm scared, Isla whispered against her shoulder. I know. But you're not alone anymore. I promise. Why are you helping us? You don't even know us. Vivian pulled back slightly, brushing the hair from Isla's face. Because someone should have helped you a long time ago. And because... She hesitated, then decided on the truth. Because when I was 19, I lost my parents. I watched them die in a hospital that didn't care enough to save them. And I swore I would never let anyone suffer alone if I could help it. Your mother and you're not alone anymore. Isla's bottom lip trembled. What if my daddy wins? What if he takes me back? He won't. How do you know? Because I'm Vivian Sterling, she said, her voice steady and sure. I've built a billion-dollar company from nothing. I've faced down corrupt board members, hostile takeovers, and corporate raiders. Your father might be powerful, but so am I. And I will not lose this fight. Isla searched her face, looking for doubt, for hesitation, for the lie that would prove this was too good to be true. She found none. Okay, Isla whispered. I believe you. Vivian smiled, a real smile, the kind she hadn't felt in years. Good. Now, are you hungry? Isla nodded. Let's see what I have in the kitchen. Fair warning, I don't cook much, so it might just be cereal. I like cereal, Isla said, and for the first time since she'd collapsed at Vivian's door, she almost smiled. They went to the kitchen together, and Vivian poured 2 bowls of cereal while Isla sat at the marble counter, her legs swinging, too short to reach the floor. This place is really big, Isla said, looking around at the pristine white kitchen with its stainless steel appliances and floor-to-ceiling windows. Too big for one person, Vivian admitted. Don't you have a family? No. My parents died when I was young. I don't have siblings. I've never been married. Why not? Vivian handed her a spoon. I suppose I never had time. I was too busy building my company. Were you lonely? The question hit like a punch to the chest. Vivian paused, considering. Yes, she said finally. I think I was. I just didn't let myself notice. Isla took a bite of cereal, chewing thoughtfully. Mama says being lonely is worse than being alone. Being alone just means nobody's with you. Being lonely means nobody sees you, even when they're looking right at you. Vivian's throat tightened. Your mother sounds very wise. She is. She reads me stories every night. Well, she used to. Before. Isla's voice cracked. Will she be okay? Really? Dr. Reeves is the best surgeon in the country. If anyone can save her, he can. But you don't know for sure. Vivian wanted to lie. Wanted to promise that everything would be fine, that Celeste would wake up and be whole again, that this nightmare would end. But Isla deserved the truth. No, Vivian said quietly. I don't know for sure. Your mother is very badly hurt. The doctors are doing everything they can, but I can't promise she'll recover. What I can promise is that we won't give up on her. And I won't give up on you. Isla nodded slowly, accepting the truth with a maturity no 7-year-old should have to possess. They ate in silence for a moment, the only sound the clink of spoons against bowls and the distant hum of the city waking up outside. Then Isla said, I heard my mama say your name once. Before tonight. Vivian looked up sharply. What? A long time ago. I was supposed to be asleep, but I heard her crying in the bathroom. She was talking to herself and she said your name. Vivian Sterling. She said, maybe Vivian Sterling would understand. I didn't know who you were. But I remembered the name. Vivian's pulse quickened. When was this? I don't know. Maybe a year ago? I asked Mama about it the next day, but she said I must have dreamed it. But I didn't. I remember. How did she know where I lived? Isla shrugged. Mama knows lots of things. She used to be a nurse. She said she was good at finding information when she needed it. A nurse. Vivian turned that over in her mind. There was something there, some connection she was missing. Why would a former nurse know Vivian's name? Why would she tell her daughter to find the woman in the tall building? Isla, Vivian said carefully. Do you remember anything else your mother said about me? The girl scrunched up her face, thinking. She said you were kind. That you helped people who got hurt. And she said. Isla paused, her expression uncertain. She said you knew what it was like to lose everything. Vivian's breath caught. Celeste knew about her parents. But how? Before she could ask more, her phone rang. Kieran's name flashed on the screen. She answered immediately. Is she? She's stable, Kieran said quickly. But Vivian, there's a problem. Donovan Creed filed a police report an hour ago. He's claiming you kidnapped his daughter. Vivian's blood ran cold. That's insane. He's also claiming that Celeste's injuries were from a home invasion, and that Isla is traumatized and confused. He has a lawyer already spinning the narrative. And the media is starting to pick it up. The media? Already? He's a public figure running for city council. This is going to be a circus. Kieran paused. The police want to talk to you. And they want to talk to Isla. Vivian looked at the little girl sitting at her counter eating cereal, trying so hard to be brave. Tell them we'll come in. But I want my lawyer present. And I want Child Protective Services involved. If Donovan thinks he can spin this, he's wrong. We have the medical evidence. We have Isla's testimony. Vivian, Kieran said gently. You need to be prepared. He's going to fight dirty. And he has resources. So do I. This isn't a business deal. This is a custody battle involving a powerful man with a pristine public image. The system is designed to reunite children with their parents, even when those parents are monsters, Vivian finished, her voice hard. I know. But I'm not backing down. She could hear Kieran sigh. I know you won't. Just, be careful. For Isla's sake. I will. Thank you, Kieran. She hung up and looked at Isla, who was watching her with those two old eyes. We have to talk to the police, don't we? Isla said quietly. Yes. But I'll be with you the whole time. And you only have to tell the truth. That's all. What if they don't believe me? Then we'll make them believe you. Isla set down her spoon, her small face set with determination. Okay. I'll tell them everything. About all the times he hurt Mama. About the things he said. About how scared we were. Vivian reached across the counter and squeezed her hand. You're so brave, Isla. Braver than any adult I know. I don't feel brave. I feel scared. That's what brave means. Being scared and doing it anyway. Isla held her gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded. Outside, the sun was starting to rise, painting the city in shades of gold and pink. A new day. A new beginning. Or the start of a war. Vivian wasn't sure which. But as she looked at Isla, this fierce, fragile child who'd stumbled into her life and cracked open her frozen heart, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would burn the world down before she let Donovan Creed hurt this girl again. Some promises were worth keeping no matter the cost. And this was one of them. What would you risk for a child you just met? Subscribe to see how far Vivian will go. Comment below. Do you think she can win against someone as powerful as Donovan? The family courthouse smelled like stale coffee and broken dreams. Vivian sat at the defendant's table, though she hated that word, defendant, as if protecting a child made her a criminal, with her team of lawyers flanking her like armor. Isla sat beside her, small and pale in the new navy dress Vivian had bought her, her hands folded in her lap so tightly her knuckles had gone white. It's going to be okay, Vivian whispered, squeezing the girl's shoulder. Isla didn't respond. Her eyes were locked on the courtroom doors, waiting for the monster to arrive. And arrive he did. Donovan Creed swept into the courtroom like he owned it, his charcoal suit perfectly tailored, his salt and pepper hair styled to perfection. He looked every inch the grieving father, the concerned husband, the pillar of the community. Behind him walked a woman who made Vivian's blood run cold. Sienna Hartwell. Vivian recognized her immediately. They'd crossed paths years ago when Vivian had exposed unethical billing practices at a major law firm. Sienna had been a rising star there, her name attached to several questionable cases. The exposure had cost Sienna a partnership and nearly destroyed her career. Now she was here. And the look in her eyes promised revenge. "Miss Sterling," Sienna said, her voice honey-sweet and venomous. "What a surprise to see you playing house with someone else's child." Vivian's lawyer, Marcus Chin, a sharp man in his 50s with steel-gray hair, leaned forward. "Miss Hartwell, I see you found a client worthy of your particular talents." Sienna smiled. "I represent fathers who've been wrongfully separated from their children. Mr. Creed is a victim here." "A victim?" Vivian repeated, her voice flat. "Is that what we're calling men who beat their wives nearly to death now?" "Alleged," Sienna corrected smoothly. "And unproven. You're making serious accusations without evidence, Miss Sterling. That's called defamation." "The evidence is in the ICU at Sterling Memorial," Marcus countered. "Multiple fractures, internal bleeding, bruises in various stages of healing. The medical records speak for themselves." "Medical records that indicate Mrs. Creed was attacked," Sienna said, "by an unknown assailant during a home invasion. My client was not present at the time. He has an airtight alibi." Vivian felt Isla stiffen beside her. The girl's breathing quickened, panic rising. "That's a lie," Vivian said quietly. "Isla witnessed everything." "Isla is 7 years old and deeply traumatized," Sienna replied. "Children her age are highly suggestible. It's possible, even likely, that in her confused state she's conflated her father with the actual attacker. Or," Marcus said, his voice hard, "she's telling the truth and your client is a domestic abuser." "All rise," the bailiff called before Sienna could respond. The Honorable Judge Octavia Monroe presiding. Everyone stood as Judge Monroe entered. She was a black woman in her early 60s with silver-streaked hair pulled into a neat bun and eyes that missed nothing. Vivian had heard of her, a former prosecutor known for her no-nonsense approach and her fierce protection of victims' rights. But she was also known for following the letter of the law, even when her heart disagreed. Judge Monroe settled into her seat and surveyed the courtroom with the air of someone who'd seen every trick, every lie, every manipulation the system had to offer. "This is a preliminary custody hearing regarding Isla Quinn, age 7, she said, her voice clear and authoritative. "Mr. Creed, you're seeking immediate return of your daughter. Miss Sterling, you're seeking temporary guardianship pending investigation into allegations of domestic violence. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," both sides answered. Judge Monroe's gaze landed on Isla. Her expression softened slightly. "Hello, Isla." Isla didn't respond. She shrank against Vivian's side, trembling. "It's okay, sweetheart," the judge said gently. "You're safe here. Nobody's going to hurt you in my courtroom." Isla's eyes darted to Donovan, who was watching her with an expression of such perfect paternal concern it made Vivian sick. "Your Honor," Sienna began, rising gracefully, "my client is devastated by this situation. His wife is fighting for her life. His daughter has been taken from him by a stranger who, while well-intentioned, has no legal right to custody. Mr. Creed is a respected businessman, a philanthropist, and a devoted father. He's cooperated fully with the police investigation into his wife's attack. He's passed voluntary drug and alcohol screenings. His home has been inspected and found safe and appropriate for a child. He has character witnesses ready to testify to his good standing in the community." She paused, letting her words sink in. Then she turned to Vivian. "Miss Sterling, on the other hand, is a single woman with no children, no family, and a documented history of mental health struggles following her parents' deaths. She lives alone in a penthouse apartment ill-suited for a child. She works 80-hour weeks running a billion-dollar company. And she has known Isla Quinn for less than 48 hours. Vivian's jaw tightened. Beside her, Marcus prepared to object, but Sienna wasn't finished. "Furthermore," she continued, pulling a folder from her briefcase, "we have evidence that Miss Sterling may not be as altruistic as she appears. Hospital records show that Celeste Quinn was employed as a nurse at the facility where Miss Sterling's parents died. We believe Miss Sterling is using this child as a proxy to work through unresolved trauma and guilt, essentially projecting her own need to save someone onto a vulnerable child. Vivian felt the blood drain from her face. How did Sienna know about Celeste's nursing history? They'd only discovered that connection themselves yesterday. Marcus stood immediately. Your Honor, this is speculation and character assassination. Miss Hartwell is grasping at straws. Is she? Sienna said smoothly. She slid a document across to the judge. This is a psychiatric evaluation of Miss Sterling from 10 years ago, following her parents' deaths. It notes severe depression, anxiety, and what the doctor described as survivor's guilt manifesting as an obsessive need to prevent others from experiencing similar loss. Your Honor, Miss Sterling is not protecting this child out of altruism. She's using her to heal her own wounds. The courtroom fell silent. Vivian stared at the document, her private medical records sealed years ago, now exposed like an open wound. Her hands shook with rage and humiliation. How did you get that? She demanded, her voice low and dangerous. Those records are sealed. Sienna smiled. Public interest exception. When someone seeks custody of a minor, their mental fitness becomes relevant. That's illegal, Marcus snapped. Your Honor, those records were obtained improperly. We move to have them excluded. Judge Monroe picked up the document, her expression unreadable. She studied it for a long moment, then looked at Sienna. Miss Hartwell, you're on thin ice. Sealed medical records require a court order to access. Do you have one? Sienna's smile faltered slightly. We're in the process of obtaining. That's a no. Judge Monroe set the document aside. This is inadmissible. And if I find out you obtained it through improper channels, I'll be filing a complaint with the Bar Association. Sienna's mask slipped for just a second, fury flashing in her eyes. But she recovered quickly. Of course, Your Honor. My apologies. Judge Monroe turned to Marcus. Your turn, counselor. Make your case. Marcus stood, his posture radiating controlled fury. Your Honor, the facts are simple. Celeste Quinn is in critical condition with injuries consistent with severe domestic violence. Her daughter came to Miss Sterling's home in the middle of the night, begging for help. Isla has made clear, consistent statements that her father is responsible for her mother's injuries. Miss Sterling, acting as any decent human being would, provided immediate aid and protection. He pulled out his own folder. We have hospital records documenting years of injuries to Celeste Quinn, broken bones, bruises, lacerations, all consistent with prolonged abuse. We have statements from neighbors who heard screaming and violence coming from the Creed residence. We have hearsay, Sienna interrupted, and circumstantial. We have a terrified 7-year-old child, Marcus said, his voice rising, who is afraid of her own father. That should tell this court everything it needs to know. Judge Monroe held up a hand. Both of you sit down. I've heard enough. Everyone sat. The courtroom held its breath. Judge Monroe looked at Isla, who was still pressed against Vivian's side, silent and shaking. Isla, the judge said gently. I need to ask you something and I need you to tell me the truth. Do you understand? Isla nodded, barely perceptible. Are you afraid of your father? Silence. Thick and suffocating. Isla's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Donovan, who was watching her with an expression that probably looked loving to everyone else. But Vivian saw the warning in his eyes. The threat. Isla, Judge Monroe repeated. You're safe here. You can tell the truth. Are you afraid of your father? Isla's hands twisted in her lap. Her whole body trembled. Then, so quietly Vivian almost didn't hear, she whispered, yes. The courtroom erupted. Donovan's face went red, his lawyer objecting loudly, Marcus arguing, the judge banging her gavel. Order. Judge Monroe shouted. I will have order in this courtroom. The noise died down. Judge Monroe looked at Isla with something like sorrow in her eyes. Why are you afraid of him, Isla? Isla's voice broke. Because he hurt my mama. I saw him. He hit her and kicked her and she was screaming and I tried to stop him but I'm too small and he told me if I told anyone he'd make us both disappear and nobody would ever find us and... She couldn't continue. She buried her face in Vivian's side, sobbing. Vivian wrapped her arms around the girl, her own eyes burning with unshed tears. Over Isla's head she met Donovan's gaze. His mask was gone. Pure hatred stared back at her. Judge Monroe set down her gavel, her expression grave. This court orders a full investigation by Child Protective Services into allegations of domestic violence in the Creed household. Until that investigation is complete, Isla Quinn will remain in the temporary custody of Vivian Sterling. Mr. Creed, you are prohibited from contacting your daughter except through supervised visitation, pending the outcome of the investigation. We will reconvene in 30 days. She banged the gavel. This hearing is adjourned. Donovan shot to his feet. This is outrageous. She's my daughter. You can't. I just did, Mr. Creed, Judge Monroe said coldly. And if you continue to disrupt my courtroom, I'll hold you in contempt. Sit down. Security moved toward Donovan and he sat, his jaw working with barely controlled fury. Sienna leaned close to him, whispering urgently. Then she turned to Vivian, her smile razor-sharp. Enjoy your victory, Miss Sterling, she said quietly. It won't last. Vivian didn't respond. She just held Isla, feeling the girl's tears soak through her blouse, and wondered what fresh hell Sienna and Donovan would unleash next. Outside the courtroom, Marcus pulled her aside. That was a win, he said. But it's temporary. 30 days isn't much time. And Sienna's right, you're vulnerable. No family, single workaholic. They're going to paint you as unfit. Then we'll prove them wrong, Vivian said. How? She looked at Isla, who was standing with Ruby, still trembling but no longer crying. By giving her a home, Vivian said quietly. A real one. By showing the court that family isn't about biology. It's about who shows up, who stays, who fights. Marcus studied her. You really care about her, don't you? Yes, Vivian said, surprised by how easily the truth came. I do. Then you'd better be ready for war. Because Donovan Creed isn't going to let this go. Vivian thought about the hatred in Donovan's eyes, the threat in Sienna's smile. Neither am I, she said. The penthouse felt different with Isla in it. Vivian had lived there for 5 years, and it had always been pristine, perfect, sterile. A showroom, not a home. But now there were small sneakers by the door, a backpack on the couch, crayon drawings on the refrigerator. Life. Messy, chaotic, beautiful life. Isla stood in the guest bedroom that Vivian had hastily converted into a child's room, staring at the new furniture with wide eyes. A bed with a purple comforter. A desk with art supplies. Shelves lined with books Ruby had picked out. This is mine? Isla whispered. All yours, Vivian said from the doorway. Isla walked slowly to the bed, running her hand over the soft comforter. Then she sat down carefully as if afraid the mattress might break beneath her. I've never had my own room before, she said quietly. Mama and I always shared. Sometimes we slept in the car when Daddy got really angry and we had to leave. Vivian's chest ached. You have your own room now. And you're safe here. I promise. Isla looked up at her, those two old eyes searching for the lie, the catch, the moment when this dream would shatter. She found none. Thank you, Isla whispered. For everything. Vivian sat beside her on the bed. You don't have to thank me, Isla. You deserve to be safe. You deserve to be happy. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you are. Isla leaned against her, and Vivian put an arm around her shoulders. They sat like that for a long moment, the city lights glittering through the window, painting the room in soft gold. Do you think my mama knows I'm okay? Isla asked. I think she does. And I think she's fighting to wake up so she can see you. I miss her. I know, sweetheart. We'll visit her tomorrow. Dr. Kieran says we can talk to her even if she can't talk back. She'll hear your voice. Isla nodded, wiping her eyes. Can I draw her a picture? To show her when she wakes up. Of course. Isla slid off the bed and went to the desk, pulling out paper and crayons with the focused intensity only children possess. Vivian watched her work, marveling at the resilience of this small, brave soul. A knock on the doorframe made her turn. Ruby stood there holding 2 mugs of hot chocolate topped with whipped cream. Thought you two might need some comfort food, Ruby said, grinning. Isla's eyes lit up. Hot chocolate. The good stuff. With extra marshmallows. Ruby handed her a mug, then gave the other to Vivian. So, Isla, what are you drawing? A picture for my mama. So she knows I'm okay. Ruby sat cross-legged on the floor beside the desk. Can I help? Isla considered, then nodded. You can draw the flowers. I'm not good at flowers. Deal. Vivian leaned against the doorframe, sipping her hot chocolate and watching Ruby and Isla work together. Ruby's purple hair fell into her face as she drew elaborate flowers in the margins of Isla's picture. Isla giggled, actually giggled, when Ruby drew a flower with a smiley face. It was such a simple moment. Such a normal moment. And yet Vivian felt tears prick her eyes. This child had been living in terror for so long, she'd forgotten how to be a child. And now, slowly, carefully she was remembering. Later that evening, after Isla had finished her drawing and carefully set it aside to dry, Ruby pulled out her laptop. "Okay, Miss Isla," Ruby said. "Have you ever played video games?" Isla shook her head. "Daddy didn't let me have screens. He said they rotted your brain." Ruby's expression darkened for a moment, but she forced a smile. "Well, your daddy was wrong about a lot of things. Come here, let me show you something." She pulled up a colorful game, something bright and cheerful with cartoon animals. Within minutes, Isla was absorbed, her small fingers fumbling with the controller while Ruby patiently showed her which buttons to press. Vivian watched from the kitchen, her phone in her hand. She should be working. She had a dozen urgent emails, 3 board meetings to prepare for, a product launch next month that needed her attention. But she couldn't tear her eyes away from Isla's concentrated face, the way she bit her lip when she was trying hard, the way she squealed with delight when she successfully completed a level. Her phone buzzed. A text from Kieran. "How's she doing?" Vivian typed back, "Better than I expected. She's playing video games with Ruby." "Good. Kids are resilient." "And Vivian? You're doing a good thing." She smiled. "Doesn't feel like enough. It's more than anyone else did. That counts." The days that followed fell into a rhythm Vivian had never experienced before. Mornings began early. Isla was an early riser, trained by years of anxiety and fear to wake at the slightest sound. Vivian would find her in the kitchen, usually sitting at the counter with a book, her legs swinging because they didn't reach the floor. They'd have breakfast together. Vivian learned that Isla liked scrambled eggs but only if they weren't too runny, that she hated orange juice but loved apple juice, that she'd eat cereal dry because she didn't like milk. These small details felt monumental. Learning another person. Making space for their needs. Adjusting her pristine routine to accommodate someone else. It should have felt burdensome. Instead it felt like waking up. Vivian enrolled Isla in Oak Ridge Academy, a private school known for its compassionate staff and strong support system. The principal, a kind woman named Dr. Patel, personally ensured that Isla would have a safe, welcoming environment. "We've worked with children from difficult backgrounds before," Dr. Patel assured Vivian. "Isla will have access to counseling, and her teachers will be briefed on her situation. We'll make sure she feels safe here." Isla's first day of school terrified her. She clung to Vivian's hand in the car, her small body rigid with fear. "What if the other kids don't like me?" she whispered. "They're going to love you," Vivian said. "You're smart and brave and kind. What's not to love? What if my daddy comes?" Vivian's heart clenched. "He can't. The judge said so. And the school has security. Nobody can take you without my permission. You're safe, Isla. I promise." Isla nodded, but Vivian could see the doubt in her eyes. Promises had been broken before. Trust had been shattered. They walked into the school together and Isla's teacher, a young woman with warm eyes and a gentle smile, greeted them at the classroom door. "You must be Isla," she said, crouching down to Isla's level. "I'm Miss Chen. I'm so excited to have you in my class. I saved you a seat right by the window because I heard you like to draw, and the light is perfect there." Isla glanced at Vivian, uncertain. "It's okay," Vivian said softly. "I'll pick you up right after school. 3 o'clock. I won't be late. Promise?" "Promise." Isla took a deep breath, then stepped into the classroom. She looked back once and Vivian waved. Then the door closed. Vivian stood in the hallway for a long moment, her chest tight. When had this child become so important to her? When had her happiness become Vivian's entire world? That afternoon when Vivian picked Isla up, the girl was smiling. "I made a friend," Isla said, climbing into the car. "Her name is Maya and she likes to draw too, and she said my dress was pretty, and we played at recess together." Vivian's eyes stung with tears. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. And Miss Chen let me read to the class because I'm really good at reading and nobody made fun of me and—" Isla paused, her expression turning serious. "I didn't think about my daddy even once." Vivian reached over and squeezed her hand. "I'm so proud of you." That night Isla drew another picture. This time, it was of Vivian holding her hand, standing in front of a tall building under a bright sun. "This is when I stopped being scared," Isla said, handing it to Vivian. Vivian stared at the drawing, at the careful way Isla had drawn their hands clasped together, at the smile on the stick figure's face. "Can I keep this?" she asked, her voice thick. "It's for you," Isla said simply. The next day Vivian had it framed and hung it in her office at Sterling Medical Technologies, right behind her desk where she could see it every day. Ruby walked in, saw the drawing and smiled. "Look at you going soft." "Shut up," Vivian said, but she was smiling too. How's Celeste doing? Vivian's smile faded. Still in the coma. Kieran says her vitals are stable, but she's not waking up. They're not sure why. The injuries should have healed enough by now for her to regain consciousness, but... She trailed off, the unspoken fear hanging between them. She'll wake up, Ruby said firmly. She has to. Isla needs her. We all need her, Vivian admitted. There are so many questions only she can answer. That evening, Vivian took Isla to the hospital to visit Celeste. They did this every day now, a ritual that gave Isla comfort. Isla sat beside her mother's bed, holding her hand, talking about her day. I got an A on my spelling test, Mama, she said softly. And Maya invited me to her birthday party next week. Vivian says I can go if I want to. I'm scared, but I think I want to try. Celeste didn't respond. Didn't move. The ventilator breathed for her, machines beeped their steady rhythm. I miss you so much, Isla whispered, her voice breaking. Please wake up. Please. Vivian stood in the doorway watching. Kieran appeared beside her, his expression grim. How much longer can she stay in the coma? Vivian asked quietly. I don't know. We're running more tests. There's no medical reason for her to still be unconscious. It's like... He hesitated. Like what? Like she's not ready to wake up. Like some part of her is still hiding. Vivian looked at Celeste's still form, at the bruises finally starting to fade, at the fragile rise and fall of her chest. She's been hiding for years, Vivian said. Maybe she doesn't know how to stop. That night, back at the penthouse, Vivian tucked Isla into bed. The girl clung to her hand, afraid to let go. Stay with me? Isla asked. Just until I fall asleep? Of course. Vivian sat on the edge of the bed, and Isla curled up under the purple comforter, her eyes already heavy. Vivian, she murmured. Yes. Why are you helping us? Nobody ever helps us. The question Isla had asked in the courtroom. The question Vivian still didn't have a good answer for. She thought about it, really thought about it, staring at this brave, broken child who'd stumbled into her life and changed everything. Because, Vivian said softly, sometimes we meet people who remind us what matters. And you reminded me that being powerful means nothing if you don't use that power to protect people who can't protect themselves. You reminded me that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up when nobody else does. Isla's eyes filled with tears. You showed up. Yes, Vivian whispered. And I'm not going anywhere. Isla's grip on her hand relaxed. Within minutes she was asleep. Vivian sat there in the darkness, watching the girl breathe, and realized something profound. She'd spent 10 years building walls around her heart, telling herself she didn't need anyone. That love was a weakness she couldn't afford. But this child had knocked on her door and shattered every wall in minutes. And Vivian didn't want to rebuild them. For the first time in a decade she wasn't alone. And it felt like coming home. The attack came 3 days later. Vivian was in a board meeting when her phone exploded with notifications. Texts, emails, news alerts, all flooding in at once. She glanced at the screen and felt the blood drain from her face. Breaking, Billionaire CEO accused of kidnapping child. Vivian Sterling, savior or predator? Behind the halo, the dark truth about Sterling's rescue. Her hands shook as she opened one of the articles. It was worse than she'd imagined. The article painted her as an unstable, grief-stricken woman who'd stolen a child to fill the void left by her parents' deaths. It cited anonymous sources claiming Vivian had an unhealthy obsession with playing savior. It mentioned her psychiatric evaluation from 10 years ago, the one Sienna had tried to use in court, and implied she was emotionally unfit to care for a child. Worse, it included photos. Old photos from the darkest period of her life, right after her parents died. Photos of her leaving the hospital, hollow-eyed and broken. Photos of her at the funeral, barely able to stand. Photos no one should have been able to access. Vivian? One of the board members, a silver-haired man named Richard, was staring at her. Is there something you'd like to tell us? She looked around the conference table. Every face was turned toward her, expressions ranging from concern to suspicion to barely concealed judgment. Her voice failed. She cleared her throat and tried again. I'm protecting a child from an abusive father. Everything else is lies. Are you sure about that? Another board member, Patricia, asked coldly. Because this article says you've been behaving erratically. Taking on a child you have no legal connection to. Putting the company at risk. At risk? Vivian's voice sharpened. How is protecting a child putting the company at risk? Your face is all over the news, Richard said. And not in a good way. Sterling Medical Technology stock has dropped 8% since this story broke this morning. Our investors are nervous. Our partners are asking questions. Patricia leaned forward, her expression hard. We need you to step back from this situation. Let the authorities handle it. The authorities gave me temporary custody, Vivian said through gritted teeth. I'm not stepping back. Then we have a problem, Richard said. Because the board has a fiduciary duty to protect this company. And right now you're a liability. The words hit like a physical blow. Vivian stared at these people she'd worked with for years, people who'd praised her vision and leadership, and saw only calculation. Only concern for profit margins and stock prices. Not one of them cared about Isla. I'm not giving her up, Vivian said quietly. If that's a problem for the board, then I suggest you learn to live with it. She stood, gathered her things and walked out of the conference room. Behind her, she heard Patricia's voice. She's lost her mind. Maybe she had. Maybe protecting a child she'd known for less than 2 weeks was insane. Maybe the board was right, and she was letting emotion cloud her judgment. But when she thought about Isla's face, about the way the girl smiled now when she came home from school, about the way she'd stopped flinching at sudden noises, Vivian knew she'd made the right choice. Even if it cost her everything. Outside Sterling Medical Technologies headquarters, protesters had gathered. Dozens of them holding signs that made Vivian sick. Return Isla to her father. Billionaires don't buy children. Sterling equals kidnapper. TV cameras captured everything as Vivian pushed through the crowd to her car. Reporters shouted questions. Miss Sterling, did you coerce Isla Quinn into making false accusations? Is it true you're using this child to work through your own trauma? What do you say to people who believe you're the real villain here? Vivian kept her head down, her security team forming a barrier around her. But the questions followed her, sharp and relentless. Ruby was waiting at the car, her face pale. It's bad, isn't it? Worse than bad, Vivian said, climbing into the back seat. How did they get those photos? The ones from my parents' funeral? I don't know. But Vivian, it's not just the photos. Sienna's been busy. Ruby pulled out her laptop and showed her the damage. Social media was on fire with posts about Vivian. Most of them negative. Comment sections filled with vitriol and judgment. She's clearly mentally unstable. Using a traumatized child to make herself feel better. Disgusting. Donovan Creed is a respected businessman. This woman is ruining his life. Poor man. His wife is in a coma and his daughter has been stolen by some billionaire with a savior complex. They don't know the truth, Vivian whispered, staring at the screen. They don't know what he did to Celeste. What he did to Isla. Because Donovan controls the narrative, Ruby said grimly. He's got money, connections and a PR team spinning everything in his favor. We're fighting uphill. Vivian's phone rang. Marcus, her lawyer. Tell me you have good news, Vivian said. I wish I did. Sienna filed 3 new motions this morning. She's asking the court to reconsider temporary custody, claiming you're an unfit guardian. She's citing the media coverage as evidence that Isla is being exposed to a hostile environment because of your involvement. That's insane. The hostile environment is because of Donovan's smear campaign. I know. But she's spinning it as Isla would be better off with her father, away from the media circus. And Vivian, there's more. She's filed a defamation suit against you personally for publicly accusing Donovan of abuse without proof. Vivian closed her eyes. Of course she has. We'll fight it. But this is bad. If public opinion turns too far against you, the judge might reconsider custody. She has to think about what's best for Isla, and if the perception is that being with you is causing more harm than good. He didn't finish. You didn't have to. What do I do? Vivian asked, hating how lost she sounded. Lay low. Don't engage with the media. Don't give them any more ammunition. And pray that Celeste wakes up soon, because her testimony is the only thing that's going to turn this around. That evening, Vivian sat in her penthouse, watching the news coverage of her own downfall. Every channel had a different spin on the story, but the message was the same. Vivian Sterling, once respected CEO, had gone off the deep end. Isla was at school, safe and unaware of the storm raging around them. Vivian had insisted she stick to her routine, that she not be pulled into this nightmare more than necessary. But how long could she protect her from the truth? Ruby appeared in the doorway, her expression grim. Vivian, there's something else. What now? Sienna leaked more photos. From years ago. When you were at your lowest. Ruby turned her laptop around and Vivian felt her stomach drop. The photos were from her early 20s, not long after her parents died. She'd fallen into a deep depression, barely eating, barely sleeping, barely functioning. Someone had taken pictures of her leaving a psychiatrist's office, her face gaunt and hollow. Pictures of her sitting alone in a park, staring at nothing. Private moments. Vulnerable moments. Now splashed across the internet for millions to judge. The caption beneath them read, "Is this the woman you want raising your children?" Vivian's hands trembled. How did she get these? I don't know. But whoever's feeding her information has access to things they shouldn't. Medical records, private photos. Vivian, someone's been following you for years. Documenting everything. The realization sent ice through Vivian's veins. Someone had been watching her. Waiting. And now they were using her darkest moments as weapons. Have you ever been judged for your worst moment? Ruby asked quietly, echoing the question Vivian had once posed to viewers. Because you're living it now. Vivian stood and walked to the window, staring out at the city. Somewhere out there, Donovan Creed was celebrating. Watching her empire crumble. Knowing he was winning. I won't give up, Vivian said. I can't. I know. But Vivian, you need to be realistic. If this keeps escalating, the judge might rule in Donovan's favor just to get Isla out of the spotlight. And then what? Vivian didn't have an answer. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Miss Sterling? A woman's voice, young and nervous. My name is Amara. I used to work for Donovan Creed. Vivian's pulse quickened. What do you want? To help. I saw the news and I can't stay silent anymore. Mr. Creed, he's not who people think he is. I witnessed things. Horrible things. But I signed an NDA when I left and he threatened me, said if I ever talked he'd destroy my life. Why are you calling now? Because I saw that little girl on TV. Isla. And I remembered the times I heard her crying in his office. The times I saw bruises on Mrs. Creed and was told to ignore them. I can't let him get away with it anymore. Even if it ruins me. Hope surged through Vivian. Will you testify? Silence. Then, yes. But you need to protect me. He has powerful friends. People who make problems disappear. I'll protect you, Vivian promised. Where are you? Amara gave her an address and Vivian grabbed her coat. I'm coming with you, Ruby said immediately. No. Stay here. If Isla gets home before me. She won't. School doesn't let out for another hour. I'm not letting you do this alone. They took Vivian's car and drove to a rundown apartment complex on the edge of the city. Amara met them at the door, a young black woman in her 20s with tired eyes and hunched shoulders. Thank you for coming, she said, letting them inside. I wasn't sure you would. Tell me everything, Vivian said. Amara took a shaky breath. I worked as Mr. Creed's assistant for 2 years. At first, everything seemed normal. He was charming, professional. But then I started noticing things. The way Mrs. Creed would call and he'd get this look in his eyes, pure hatred. The way Isla would come to the office and be terrified to speak. The way he'd lose his temper over nothing and throw things, scream at people. Did you ever witness him being violent? Not directly. But I heard things. Once Mrs. Creed called his cell phone. I heard the fight through his office door. He was screaming, telling her she was worthless, that she'd be nothing without him. Then I heard a crash and when he came out his knuckles were bleeding. He said he'd punched a wall but... She swallowed hard. I don't think that's what happened. What else? He had files. Personnel files on people he wanted to control. Politicians, business rivals, journalists. He collected dirt on everyone. Photos, documents, secrets. He used them as leverage. And when someone crossed him... She trailed off, her face pale. What happened when someone crossed him? Ruby asked. They disappeared. Not literally, but their careers ended. Their reputations were destroyed. One woman tried to sue him for sexual harassment. Within a week, photos surfaced of her at a party years ago, drunk and dancing on a table. The case was dismissed. She lost her job. Last I heard, she'd left the state. Vivian's blood ran cold. Do you have proof? Documents, recordings, anything? Amara nodded slowly. Before I left, I copied files. I knew he might come after me, so I made sure I had insurance. I have records of payments to people who falsified documents. Emails where he discusses bribing officials. And she pulled out a small flash drive. Audio recordings. Including one where he talks about teaching Celeste a lesson the night before she ended up in the hospital. Vivian's hands shook as she took the flash drive. This could change everything. It could also get me killed, Amara said quietly. Mr. Creed doesn't forgive betrayal. I'll make sure you're safe, Vivian promised. I'll put you up in a secure location. Pay for a lawyer. Whatever you need. Amara's eyes filled with tears. Why are you doing this? You don't even know me. Because standing up to monsters is the only way they lose their power, Vivian said. And I'm done letting him win. Back at the penthouse, Ruby immediately started going through the files on the flash drive. Her eyes widened with each document she opened. Vivian, this is gold. Proof of bribery, witness tampering, falsified documents. And this audio. She played a clip. Donovan's voice filled the room, cold and venomous. Celeste needs to learn her place. She thinks she can defy me? She thinks she can take my daughter and run? I'll remind her who's in control. And when I'm done, she'll never think about leaving again. Vivian felt sick. When was this recorded? The day before Celeste ended up in the ICU. That's premeditation. That's evidence of intent. Ruby nodded. This changes everything. We need to get this to Marcus immediately. Vivian grabbed her phone, but before she could dial, the penthouse door opened. Isla walked in, her backpack on her shoulders, her face pale. Behind her stood a woman from Child Protective Services, her expression sympathetic but firm. Miss Sterling, the woman said. I'm Sandra Okoye from CPS. We need to talk. Vivian's stomach dropped. What's wrong? We've received multiple complaints about Isla's living situation. Allegations that she's being exposed to a hostile media environment, that you're using her for personal gain, that she's not receiving proper care. That's absurd, Vivian said. Isla is thriving here. She's going to school, she has friends, she's safe. I'm not here to remove her, Sandra interrupted. Yet. But I need to conduct a home inspection and interview Isla privately. It's protocol when complaints are filed. Vivian wanted to scream. This was Donovan's doing. Another attack, another attempt to wear her down. But she forced herself to stay calm. Of course. Whatever you need. Sandra spent the next hour inspecting the penthouse, checking Isla's room, asking questions. Finally, she sat down with Isla in the living room while Vivian waited in the kitchen, her nerves frayed. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but she saw Isla's face through the doorway. The girl looked terrified, her hands twisting in her lap, her shoulders hunched. After what felt like an eternity, Sandra emerged. Miss Sterling, I need to be honest with you. The complaints are clearly motivated by Mr. Creed's legal team. But my hands are tied. If the media attention continues, if Isla's well-being appears to be compromised in any way, I'll have no choice but to recommend alternative placement. Alternative placement? Vivian's voice cracked. You mean sending her back to him? Not necessarily. Foster care is an option. But Miss Sterling, you need to understand. My job is to protect Isla's best interests. And right now, being in the center of a media firestorm isn't in her best interests. After Sandra left, Vivian sat on the couch, her head in her hands. Everything was falling apart. The board was turning against her. The media had painted her as a villain. CPS was threatening to remove Isla. And Donovan was winning. Isla climbed onto the couch beside her, her small body pressed against Vivian's side. Are they going to take me away? She whispered. Vivian pulled her close. No. I won't let them. You keep promising things you can't control. The words were an echo of what Isla had said that first night. And they cut just as deep. I know, Vivian admitted. But I'm going to keep fighting for you anyway. Even if it costs me everything. Isla looked up at her with those impossibly old eyes. What? Everyone always gives up on us eventually. Why are you different? Vivian thought about the question. Really thought about it. Because, she said finally, you remind me that some things are worth losing everything for. And you're one of them. Isla's eyes filled with tears. She threw her arms around Vivian's neck and held on tight. And Vivian held her back, feeling the weight of every promise she'd made, every battle still to come. She'd built an empire from nothing. Surely she could protect one child. But as she looked at the news coverage still playing silently on the TV, at Donovan's smug face giving interviews, she wondered if this was a fight she could actually win. Or if loving this child would cost her everything she'd ever built. The call came at 2 a.m. Vivian jolted awake, her heart pounding. She grabbed her phone, squinting at the screen. Richard. The board chairman. Hello. Her voice was thick with sleep. Vivian. Emergency board meeting. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. non-negotiable. Dread pooled in her stomach. What's this about? You know what it's about. The board is voting on your position as CEO. The words hit like a physical blow. You can't be serious. Stock prices have dropped 15%. We've lost 2 major contracts. Investors are pulling out. You've become a liability, Vivian. The board has no choice. I built this company, she said, her voice shaking. Everything you have exists because of me. I know, and I'm sorry. But business is business. Be there at 9. Bring your lawyer. He hung up. Vivian sat in the darkness, her phone trembling in her hand. They were going to fire her. Strip away everything she'd built. Everything she'd sacrificed for. And for what? For protecting a child who had nowhere else to go? She looked at Isla's bedroom door, slightly ajar. She could hear the girl's soft breathing, peaceful in sleep. Worth it, Vivian thought. Even if I lose everything, she's worth it. But the fear was there too, cold and relentless. What happened when she had nothing left to fight with? When Donovan took away her company, her reputation, her resources? What then? She didn't sleep the rest of the night. At 6 a.m. she was in her office, staring at financial reports she could barely focus on. Her empire was crumbling and she was powerless to stop it. Ruby found her there an hour later, still in her pajamas, her face pale. I heard, Ruby said quietly, about the board meeting. They're going to vote me out. Maybe not. You've got allies on the board. People who remember what you've done for this company. And I've got more people who care about profit margins than principles. Vivian laughed bitterly. I knew there would be consequences. I just didn't think they'd come so fast. What are you going to do? I don't know. The words hung in the air, heavy with defeat. At 8 a.m. Vivian got dressed for the meeting. She chose her armor carefully, a tailored black suit, her mother's pearls, her most expensive heels. If she was going down, she'd do it looking like the CEO she'd earned the right to be. Isla was eating breakfast when Vivian emerged from her bedroom. You look fancy, Isla said. Important meeting today. Are you nervous? Vivian wanted to lie. Wanted to tell Isla everything would be fine. But she'd promised to always tell her the truth. Yes, she admitted. Very nervous. Isla set down her spoon. Is it because of me? Vivian's heart clenched. No, sweetheart. This is not your fault. But if I wasn't here, you wouldn't have all these problems. The people on TV wouldn't say mean things about you. Your company wouldn't be in trouble. Isla. Maybe I should go back to my daddy, Isla said, her voice small. Maybe that would fix everything. Vivian crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt in front of Isla's chair, taking her small hands in hers. Listen to me very carefully, she said, her voice fierce. You are not going back to him. Ever. And nothing that's happening is your fault. Do you understand me? These problems are because of your father's lies and because some people care more about money than doing what's right. But you are the best thing that's happened to me in 10 years. Isla's eyes filled with tears. Really? Really? And I would lose everything, my company, my reputation, all of it, before I let you go back to someone who hurt you. But that's not fair to you. Vivian smiled even though her own eyes were burning. Love isn't about fair, sweetheart. It's about choosing what matters. And you matter more than any of this. Isla threw her arms around Vivian's neck, sobbing. Vivian held her, feeling the girl's tears soak through her expensive suit, and didn't care. When Isla finally pulled back, she wiped her eyes and said, Are you going to be okay? I don't know, Vivian admitted. But I'm going to try. The board meeting was exactly as brutal as she'd expected. Richard called for the vote within the first 10 minutes. No preamble. No mercy. All in favor of removing Vivian Sterling as CEO, effective immediately? 6 hands went up. Vivian watched each one rise, feeling her world collapse. Patricia, who'd always resented Vivian's success. Thomas, who cared only about quarterly earnings. Elena, David, Marcus, Robert, all people she'd thought she could count on. All opposed. 3 hands. Only 3. The motion passes, Richard said, his voice flat. Vivian, you're relieved of your duties as CEO, effective immediately. You'll retain your position on the board and your shares, but operational control transfers to an interim CEO until we can conduct a proper search. Vivian stood slowly, her legs shaking. I built this company from nothing. Everything you're sitting on, every dollar in your bank accounts, exists because of my vision. And you're throwing me out because I dared to do the right thing? We're throwing you out because you let personal drama interfere with business, Patricia said coldly. You made yourself a liability. Personal drama? Vivian's voice rose. I protected a child from an abusive father. If that's drama to you, then I'm glad to be done with this board. She gathered her things and walked out, her head high even as her world crumbled. Ruby was waiting in the hallway, her face pale. What happened? I'm out. Oh, Vivian. It's fine, Vivian lied. I'll figure something out. But as they rode the elevator down, passing floor after floor of the building she'd built, Vivian felt the weight of what she'd lost settle over her like a shroud. She'd sacrificed everything for Isla. Her company. Her reputation. Her life's work. And she didn't regret it. But God, it hurt. Back at the penthouse, she found Isla in her room, drawing. The girl looked up as Vivian entered, her expression anxious. How did it go? Vivian sat on the bed, suddenly exhausted. Not well. Did you lose your job? Yes. Isla's face crumpled. Because of me. No, Vivian said firmly. Because of your father. And because some people don't understand that protecting you was the right thing to do. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm not. Isla crawled into Vivian's lap, small and warm and trusting. Vivian wrapped her arms around her, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, feeling the steady beat of her heart. My mama told me once, Isla said quietly, that angels don't always have wings. Sometimes they just show up when you need them most. Vivian's eyes burned with unshed tears. Your mama sounds very wise. She is. And I think you're one of those angels. Even if you don't think so. Vivian couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They fell silently as she held this brave, beautiful child who'd turned her entire world upside down. She'd lost her company. Her reputation. Her carefully constructed life. But sitting there with Isla in her arms, Vivian realized she'd gained something far more valuable. She'd found a reason to live that had nothing to do with profit margins or quarterly earnings or board meetings. She'd found someone to fight for. Someone to love. Someone who made her feel like the person she'd always wanted to be. And that, she realized, was worth everything she'd lost. Ruby burst into the penthouse 3 days later, her laptop clutched to her chest, her eyes wild. Vivian, she shouted. I found something. You need to see this right now. Vivian looked up from where she'd been helping Isla with homework, her heart leaping. What is it? Ruby set the laptop on the kitchen counter, her fingers flying across the keys. I've been digging into Celeste's background. Trying to understand why she sent Isla to you specifically. And I found something in her employment records from 10 years ago. She pulled up a document. Hospital employment records for Celeste Quinn, showing her tenure as a registered nurse. She worked at Sterling Memorial, Ruby said. 10 years ago. Right around the time your parents. Vivian's breath caught. What? Look at the dates. Ruby pointed. She was employed there for 2 years. She quit 3 weeks after your parents died. Vivian stared at the screen, her mind racing. Celeste had been a nurse at the hospital where her parents died? That couldn't be coincidence. Did she work in emergency care? Vivian asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ruby clicked through more records. Yes. Night shift. Your rotation. Vivian's hands started to shake. The night my parents died was a night shift. They came in around midnight. The call came at dawn. Vivian's phone buzzed on her nightstand, pulling her from restless sleep. She grabbed it, her heart already racing before she saw Kieran's name on the screen. She's awake, he said, and those 2 words changed everything. Celeste is awake. She's asking for Isla. Vivian was out of bed before he finished speaking. She threw on clothes, her hands shaking with something between hope and terror. After 3 weeks in a coma, 3 weeks of waiting and wondering and praying, Celeste was finally awake. She knocked gently on Isla's bedroom door. The girl was already sitting up in bed as if she'd sensed something was different. Your mama's awake, Vivian said, her voice thick with emotion. Isla's eyes went wide. For a moment she didn't move, didn't breathe. Then she scrambled out of bed and threw herself into Vivian's arms, sobbing. She's really awake? She's okay? She's weak but she's asking for you. Do you want to see her? Isla nodded frantically, tears streaming down her face. They drove to the hospital in the pale morning light, the city still half asleep around them. Isla sat in the back seat, clutching the drawing she'd made weeks ago, the one of her and Vivian holding hands. She'd been saving it, waiting for this moment. Sterling Memorial's ICU was quiet at this hour. Kieran met them at the entrance, his tired face breaking into a smile. She's in room 12, he said. Fair warning, she's still very weak. The ventilator came out an hour ago, but her voice is hoarse. Don't expect her to talk much. Isla nodded, her small hand gripping Vivian's tightly. They walked down the sterile hallway together, their footsteps echoing. Outside room 12, Isla stopped, suddenly terrified. What if she doesn't remember me? she whispered. What if the hurt changed her? Vivian knelt down, taking Isla's face in her hands. Your mother fought her way back to you. She will always remember you. Always. Isla took a shaky breath, then pushed open the door. Celeste lay in the hospital bed, propped up slightly, her face still marked by fading bruises but alive, gloriously, miraculously alive. Her eyes were open, and when she saw Isla they filled with tears. Baby, she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. Isla ran to the bed, careful not to jostle her mother, and Celeste wrapped her arms around her daughter with what little strength she had. They held each other, crying, and Vivian stood in the doorway, her own eyes burning. This was what she'd fought for. This moment. This reunion. After a long while, Celeste looked up and met Vivian's gaze. Recognition flickered in her eyes, deep, profound recognition that went beyond just the past few weeks. You came, Celeste whispered. I wasn't sure, but you came. Vivian stepped closer to the bed. Of course I came. I remembered you, Celeste said, her voice cracking. That night, 10 years ago, you were just a girl. So broken. I couldn't leave you alone. I know, Vivian said softly. Ruby found the records. The security footage. I remember you now. You stayed with me when no one else did. Celeste's tears fell faster. I thought about you over the years. Wondered if you were okay. Then I saw you on the news, this powerful CEO building an empire. I was so proud. A stranger, but I was proud. Isla looked between them, confusion and wonder on her face. You knew each other? Your mama saved me once, Vivian said, sitting on the edge of the bed. A long time ago when I needed someone. And when you knocked on my door, she was asking me to do the same for you. Celeste squeezed Isla's hand. I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better. I'm sorry I let him hurt us for so long. You don't have to be sorry, Mama, Isla said fiercely. You protected me the best way you could. You got me out. Celeste looked at Vivian, gratitude and sorrow mingling in her expression. Tell me everything. Tell me what happened after that night. So Vivian told her. About finding Isla at her door. About rushing Celeste to the hospital. About the custody battle, the media attacks, losing her company. About fighting for Isla with everything she had. And Celeste wept through all of it. You lost everything because of us, she whispered. No, Vivian said firmly. I lost things that didn't matter. And I gained something that does. I gained a family. Celeste reached out and took Vivian's hand. Her grip was weak, but her intent was clear. Thank you. For keeping her safe. For keeping your promise. You saved me once, Vivian said, her voice breaking. Let me save you now. You already did. They sat together for a long time, the three of them, as morning light filtered through the hospital windows. Celeste told them her story in fragments, her voice fading in and out with exhaustion. She'd met Donovan when she was 19, fresh out of nursing school. He'd been charming, successful, everything she thought she wanted. The abuse started slowly, criticism, control, isolation. By the time she realized what he was, she was pregnant with Isla and trapped. I tried to leave once, Celeste said, her hand stroking Isla's hair. When you were 2. I packed our bags and ran. But he found us within a day. He told me if I ever tried again, he'd make sure I never saw you again. That he had lawyers, judges, police on his payroll. That I had nothing and he had everything. So I stayed. I endured. I protected you the only way I knew how, by being the target instead of you. Isla's tears soaked through her mother's hospital gown. You should have run. You should have left me with him and saved yourself. Never, Celeste said fiercely with more strength than she'd shown yet. Never, baby. I would die before I left you with him. You almost did, Isla whispered. I know, and I'm sorry. But that night, the night he found us, I knew he was going to kill me. I saw it in his eyes. So I told you to run. To find the woman in the tall building. To find Vivian Sterling, the girl I'd comforted once, hoping she'd remember what it felt like to lose everything. She looked at Vivian. I gambled everything on a stranger's kindness. On the hope that you'd grown into someone who still cared about people in pain. You didn't gamble, Vivian said. You knew. Deep down you knew I'd help. Maybe, Celeste admitted. Or maybe I just had no other choice. Either way, you didn't let us down. Kieran appeared in the doorway, his expression apologetic. I hate to interrupt, but Celeste needs rest. Her body's been through a lot. Isla clutched her mother's hand. I don't want to leave. You don't have to go far, Celeste said. I'll be here. And baby, I'm not going anywhere this time. I promise. We'll come back this afternoon, Vivian said. And every day after that until you're strong enough to leave. Where will we go? Celeste asked, fear flickering in her eyes. We can't go back to his house. We don't have anywhere. You'll come home with us, Vivian said simply. To my penthouse. There's plenty of room. You'll stay until you're healed and then we'll figure out what comes next. Together. Celeste's face crumpled. I can't ask that of you. You're not asking. I'm offering. And I don't take no for an answer. For the first time since waking, Celeste smiled. A real, genuine smile that transformed her bruised face into something beautiful. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. As they left the hospital, Isla held Vivian's hand tightly. She's really going to be okay, isn't she? Yes, Vivian said. We all are. And walking out into the morning sunshine, Vivian believed it. The courtroom was packed. News cameras lined the back wall despite the judge's restrictions on filming. Reporters filled every available seat. This case had become a spectacle, and everyone wanted to see how it ended. Vivian sat at the defendant's table with Marcus, Ruby beside her for moral support. Across the aisle, Donovan sat with Sienna, his expression confident, almost smug. He dressed impeccably for this. Designer suit, perfectly styled hair, the image of a wronged father seeking justice. But Vivian could see the tension in his jaw. The way his hands clenched and unclenched. He knew something had changed. Judge Monroe entered and everyone stood. She settled into her seat and surveyed the courtroom with her sharp, assessing gaze. We're here for the final custody hearing regarding Isla Quinn, she said. Ms. Hartwell, you may present your closing arguments. Sienna stood, smooth and polished as ever. Your Honor, this case is simple. Donovan Creed is a loving father who's been unjustly separated from his daughter based on unsubstantiated allegations. His wife, Celeste, has a history of mental instability. Objection, Marcus said, standing. Mrs. Creed has no such history. This is defamation. Sustained, Judge Monroe said. Ms. Hartwell, stick to facts. Sienna's smile didn't falter. The facts are these. Mr. Creed has cooperated fully with every investigation. He's passed drug tests, psychological evaluations, home inspections. Meanwhile, Miss Sterling has lost her position as CO due to erratic behavior. She's become obsessed with this case, projecting her own trauma onto a child she barely knows. She turned to face the courtroom. Isla Quinn belongs with her father. Not with a woman who's using her as a substitute for the family she lost. Vivian's jaw tightened, but she didn't react. She'd learned that Sienna fed on emotional responses. Your Honor, Marcus said, rising. May we present our evidence? Proceed. What happened next was methodical devastation. First, Dr. Kieran took the stand. He walked the court through Celeste's injuries in clinical detail, the pattern of trauma consistent with years of abuse, not a single violent incident. The old fractures that had healed wrong. The internal scarring that spoke of repeated beatings. In my professional opinion, Kieran said, his voice steady and damning, Mrs. Creed was subjected to prolonged, systematic domestic violence. This was not an isolated incident. This was torture. Sienna tried to discredit him, but Kieran was unshakable. He treated thousands of abuse victims. He knew the signs. Next, Ruby presented evidence from Amara, the former assistant. Donovan's face went pale as Ruby displayed financial records showing payments to witnesses, falsified documents, bribes paid to silence people who knew too much. Your Honor, Ruby said, Mr. Creed has spent years building a false image. But the truth is documented in his own records. Then came the security footage. Ruby had worked with a forensics expert to recover deleted files from Donovan's building. The video quality was grainy but unmistakable. Donovan dragging Celeste through the lobby by her hair, her face bloodied, Isla running behind them screaming. The courtroom went silent as the footage played. Several people gasped. One reporter whispered into their phone. Donovan's mask finally cracked. His face went red, fury radiating from him. That footage is illegally obtained. Sienna shouted. It's inadmissible. The footage was recovered from a building Mr. Creed owns, Marcus countered. He deleted it to hide evidence of a crime. That makes it admissible under the destruction of evidence statute. Judge Monroe studied the frozen image on the screen, Celeste's terrified face, Donovan's twisted expression of rage. I'll allow it, she said quietly. But the final blow came from an unexpected source. The courtroom doors opened and a woman walked in, elderly, dignified, with silver hair and kind eyes. She wore a simple dress and carried herself with quiet strength. Your Honor, Marcus said, This is Mrs. Beatrice Laurent. She worked as a housekeeper in the Creed residence for 5 years. Donovan went rigid. Sienna leaned over, whispering urgently, but he didn't respond. He was staring at Beatrice with something like terror. Beatrice took the stand, her voice soft but clear. I worked for Mr. Creed from the time Isla was a baby until 2 years ago. I was paid well and told never to speak about what happened in that house. But I can't stay silent anymore. What did you witness, Mrs. Laurent? Marcus asked gently. Everything, she said, her eyes filling with tears. I saw him hit her. Saw him scream at her, degrade her, hurt her. I saw little Isla hiding in closets trying to make herself invisible. I heard Mrs. Celeste beg him to stop, promise to do better, apologize for things that weren't her fault. Why didn't you report this? He threatened me. Said if I ever told anyone he'd make sure my grandson, who has special needs, lost his disability benefits. He said he had connections that he could destroy my family. She looked at Donovan, her expression sad. I was a coward. I took his money and stayed silent while that poor woman suffered. What changed? Marcus asked. I saw Miss Sterling on the news. Saw her lose everything to protect that little girl. And I thought, if she can be that brave, so can I. I contacted Miss Sterling and she found me a lawyer. Protected my grandson. Gave me the courage to tell the truth. She turned to Judge Monroe. Your Honor, Donovan Creed is a monster. He hid it well, but I saw the real him. And I'm begging you, don't let him near that child again. The courtroom erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Donovan shot to his feet, his face purple with rage. She's lying, he roared. That old woman is senile. She's being paid to lie. Mr. Creed, sit down, Judge Monroe ordered. I will not. This is a witch hunt. That woman, he pointed at Vivian, has poisoned everyone against me. She stole my daughter. She destroyed my reputation. And you're all falling for it. Mr. Creed, Judge Monroe said, her voice sharp as a blade. Sit down now or I'll have you removed. But Donovan was beyond reason. Years of carefully controlled rage finally exploded. My wife is a lying whore. My daughter is an ungrateful brat. And you? He turned to Vivian, his eyes wild. You should have minded your own business. If you'd left us alone, none of this would have happened. Security moved toward him, but he wasn't finished. I'll destroy you, he shouted at Vivian. I'll take everything from you. I'll make sure you never work again. Oh. 3 security guards grabbed him, forcing him toward the door. He fought them, screaming obscenities, his polished mask completely shattered. The courtroom watched in stunned silence as the respected businessman, the philanthropist, the devoted father, revealed himself to be exactly what Celeste and Isla had always known he was. A monster. Judge Monroe waited until the doors closed behind him before speaking. Miss Hartwell, do you have anything to add? Sienna stood slowly, her face pale. For once she had nothing to say. Her entire case had crumbled, and her client had destroyed any remaining credibility with his outburst. No, Your Honor, she said quietly. Judge Monroe looked at the evidence spread before her, then at Vivian, then at the empty seat where Donovan had been. I've seen a lot in my years on this bench, she said. But I have rarely seen such a clear case of domestic violence and child endangerment. Mr. Creed's behavior today, combined with the evidence presented, leaves no doubt in my mind about his character. She picked up her gavel. I hereby terminate all parental rights of Donovan Creed regarding his daughter, Isla Quinn. A permanent restraining order is issued, prohibiting him from coming within 500 feet of Isla or Celeste Quinn. Full custody is granted to Celeste Quinn, with Vivian Sterling named as legal guardian and godmother. She banged the gavel. Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. Mr. Creed will face charges of assault, domestic violence, witness tampering and destruction of evidence. This court is adjourned. The courtroom exploded with noise. Reporters surged forward. Cameras flashed. But Vivian heard none of it. She turned to find Isla standing in the doorway with Celeste, who'd insisted on being there despite still recovering. The girl's eyes were wide, uncertain. We're safe now? Isla asked, her voice small. Vivian crossed the courtroom and knelt in front of her, taking her hands. You're safe. Always. Isla threw herself into Vivian's arms, sobbing with relief. Celeste joined them, wrapping her arms around both of them, and they stood there, 3 women who'd survived a monster, holding each other while the world erupted around them. Thank you, Celeste whispered against Vivian's shoulder. For fighting. For not giving up. Thank you for trusting me, Vivian said. For remembering me. for giving me a chance to be part of your family." They walked out of the courthouse together, past the cameras and reporters, past the crowds into the sunlight. And for the first time in weeks, Vivian felt like she could breathe. 6 months later, autumn painted the city in shades of gold and crimson. Vivian sat on a park bench watching Isla swing higher and higher, her laughter carrying on the breeze. The girl had grown in the past months, not just physically but in spirit. The haunted look had faded from her eyes. She smiled easily now, laughed often, lived without fear. Celeste settled onto the bench beside Vivian, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. She looked healthy now, the bruises long faded, her strength returned. She'd started working at Sterling Memorial Hospital as a nursing supervisor. Kieran had personally recruited her, and she'd accepted with tears in her eyes. "She's happy," Celeste said, watching her daughter. "Really truly happy. I'd forgotten what that looked like." "So am I," Vivian admitted. And it was true. The past 6 months had been transformative. She'd regained her position as CEO. The board had voted unanimously to reinstate her once Donovan's crimes became public. Sterling Medical Technology stock had rebounded stronger than ever. But more than that, Vivian had started something new. The Sterling Foundation for Domestic Violence Survivors provided legal aid, safe housing and counseling for women and children escaping abuse. Beatrice Laurent served as a board member, using her experience to help others find the courage to speak up. Amara worked there too, heading the legal division. She'd found her purpose in helping others fight back against powerful abusers. "Thank you for keeping your promise," Celeste said quietly. "I know it cost you everything." "It gave me everything," Vivian corrected. "Before Isla knocked on my door, I was successful but empty. I had money and power but no purpose. No family. No real life." She smiled. "Now I have both of you. I have meaning." Celeste reached over and squeezed her hand. "You know that night 10 years ago, when your parents died, I almost didn't stop. I was so overwhelmed, so tired. But something made me sit with you. Made me stay. I'm glad you did." "Me too. Because you saved us, Vivian. Not just from Donovan but from despair. From feeling like we'd always be victims. You taught Isla, and me, that we deserved to be safe. To be happy. That our pain wasn't our identity." "You taught me something too," Vivian said. "You taught me what family really means. That it's not about blood or obligation. It's about showing up. About choosing each other every single day." Isla ran over, her cheeks flushed from exertion. "Can we get ice cream? Please?" Celeste laughed. "It's October. It's freezing. Ice cream tastes good all year." Isla protested. Vivian stood, holding out her hands to both of them. "Ice cream it is." They walked through the park together. 3 people who'd found each other in the darkest moment and built something beautiful from the wreckage. Not a traditional family but a real one. A chosen one. Isla skipped ahead then turned back to them. "Race you to the ice cream shop." She took off running and Celeste laughed, chasing after her. Vivian followed more slowly, watching them, her heart fuller than she'd ever thought possible. Her phone buzzed. A message from Ruby, new survivor intake. Single mother, 2 kids. Husband threatened to kill her if she left. She needs help. Vivian typed back, "Give her my number. I'll call her tonight." Because this was her purpose now. Not just building companies or making money, though she'd continue doing both. But using her resources, her voice, her power to help women and children escape the same nightmare Celeste and Isla had lived through. One family at a time. One knock on the door at a time. Isla reached the ice cream shop and turned back, waving frantically. "Hurry up, slow pokes." Vivian quickened her pace, catching up to Celeste. "Happy?" Celeste asked. "Happier than I ever knew I could be," Vivian admitted. And it was true. Some families are born. Others are built from broken pieces and brave choices. From midnight knocks and impossible promises. From strangers who become sisters, mothers who become fighters, and children who become reasons to never give up. Vivian had spent 10 years building an empire alone. Now she was building something better. A family. A purpose. A life worth living. And it had all started with 3 desperate knocks on a penthouse door. Some families are born. Others are chosen. Which story should we tell next? If this story touched you, subscribe. We're just getting started. Comment below. What would you have done in Vivian's place?